I mean, I guess that most people, if they know about Ligeti's music, they will know about the most famous pieces he wrote and how he became famous. And I think he's come to a wider, he's become known to a wider public actually through the films of Stanley Kubrick, for example, who used his music in a very special way in films like 2001 or The Shining. And those, of course, are those big orchestral pieces that are sort of so atmospheric and dense and sort of spaced out. And I guess one of the pieces is even called Atmospheres. And that's how people know him. And actually, I think a public appreciated him that would not normally have gotten into contemporary music. But you know, it's quite austere music and hasn't got many tunes and this kind of thing that may put off some people who are more into classical mainstream music. But actually with this piece, of course, it's a completely different case because it's a very early piece by Ligeti when he was quite influenced by things that Bartók has done, you know, which was very related to Hungarian and Romanian folk music. He was a very young man, and in fact it wasn't published at first, and only late in his life Ligeti allowed his publisher to print parts and publish this piece, and it's since, I think, become quite a hit with wherever it's gone with audiences, because it's such an entertaining and brilliant and coloristic piece of music. And in fact it's called Concerto Romanesque, and it really is. It's basically like a gypsy band playing at a village wedding, and includes Romanian folk melodies, but also just has the sense of more of a band playing, and then it has a melancholic movement and a beautiful cor anglais solo in the slow movement, and a beautiful effect where he has this natural horns corresponding with each other. There's one from very far in the audience playing and having a dialogue with the horn in the orchestra, and then there are two fast movements which are really speedy, fast Romanian village dances. And yeah, it's I guess surprising when you hear it for the first time. And even just now we had a first rehearsal with the orchestra, and about half of them came up to me and said how much they enjoyed it and that why didn't they know about this before. And yeah, so I'm glad that the orchestra have picked it up. And then there's also actually a quite interesting link to the Brahms symphony, because of course Brahms was quite interested in the culture of Hungarian music and Hungarian dances. Obviously he's written Hungarian dances for piano and then orchestrated them, you know, and there's some elements which are very similar to what, although it's Romanian, but in terms of East European folk music there are really some rhythmic elements, the whole syncopated thing that you know, you even get a little bit of that in the last movement of Brahms' Fourth Symphony. And I think because I'm doing the Ligeti, that, you know, made me bring out those elements in the Brahms and think about that a little bit more, and maybe it will also become an interesting link for the audience suddenly when they hear that. So that's the kind of programming I like to do. And we first talked about the Brahms, and then I thought, oh, the Ligeti would actually go very nicely with that. And it's also, and then linking to Beethoven again, the Ligeti is about the same size of orchestra that we use on the Beethoven, or that, you know, Beethoven has written for, and therefore I decided to use the same amount of string players for the Beethoven and Ligeti, slightly reduced from the set we have for the Brahms. True that each of Brahms' symphonies, the four, that they're all very different from each other. I think everyone has their own distinct, almost language and character. I think that the fourth is extremely tuneful too, and it's just, I guess, because it's in a minor key. It starts off in a very autumnal, nostalgic, melancholic mood, and then becomes very very dramatic, and actually if you look at the second movement, also starts with this melancholic tune that again really gets revved up and develops into a very dramatic composition. And therefore I guess it is very, really befits the time that he wrote it, or that he sort of wrote it more as a much more mature composer, and that it was his last symphony. And it's I mean the first one was in minor as well, but it ends so, the first symphony is in C minor, but it ends in such glorious C major, unbelievably. You know, like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony, you know, moving into that realm of C major. And obviously, in the First Symphony, Brahms worked off all that shadow of Beethoven. And by the Fourth Symphony, I think that's quite a different. It's a different case, and he's really Brahms completely into his own. But it does also finish. It does finish in minor.